sounds for round 4. I know we've got some rugby coming up very shortly, and we've got a few important things to do. It's been a very busy week, I understand, in Brisbane, where the Australians are meeting the All Blacks tonight. And Michael Checker rang Quade Cooper to ask him how he was getting on. And Quade Cooper said to him, he said, I'm not feeling too good at the moment. I wonder if you could go to the grocery shop and buy some stuff for me. So Michael Checker, being the wonderful man that he did, went down to the local supermarket and he bumped into the former coach, Ewan McKenzie, who was there. And Ewan McKenzie said to him, he said, Michael, what are you doing here? And Michael Checker said, I've just come down to get a sack of spuds for Quade Cooper. And Ewan said, Jesus, that's a bloody good exchange. I wouldn't have thought of that at the time myself. But we'll be time for the rugby later on. Tonight, we have a special guest, a really special guest. I have a list here, 3 pages of his achievements. But I can tell you the one reason why he was chosen over everybody else who put forward to speak to us tonight is because he's not taller than me. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to give a warm welcome to an old boy of the school, class of, well, he'll tell us. But let's have a round of applause for Di Henwood.
Thank you very much, Brian. Cheers, kia ora. My name is Di Henwood. I was class of 95. I was the school council president. I've now gone on to, I do a game show at 5:30 on New Zealand TV asking semi-retarded New Zealanders questions. And it is a wonderful job that I have. I love this country. And to be honest, I've been a guy who, to be honest, I never had goals. And that was never in a bad way. I've never had goals. I've always lived in each moment that I've had and experienced it. So recently when I was asked to speak here, it was a joy looking back at the time that I had at Wellington College. And I have I've got a 4-year-old now myself, and he's almost about to turn 5, and he is going into the education system, and it started me thinking. And it realised to me how important foundations are, especially like the first 3 years of a human's life. And then, especially for me, it wasn't primary school, it was going to college. And tonight, seeing faces, Harvey Rees-Thomas and Gary Gervin and Mike were just chatting before. It is amazing to me. I was in 94, we were talking about that sea change of arts and sports. I basically, when I went into 3rd form, I was this size. I was 5'5" and I was 65 kgs. I played rugby, I representative for Wellington. I played at college. Like a good New Zealander, I never quite made the firsts. I came in at 3rd, I was in the 3rds. 3rd 15, the bronze 15, that's where you want to be. Well, humble us Kiwis. Not the first, mate. The 3rds is all good for me. But I loved rugby, and then I was bigger. We had people at our school like Ace Tia, these big boys. I was bigger than him, but then all of a sudden, all the people with me went whoop and became huge, and I stayed this exact same size, so I thought I'd get into comedy. And it has worked out. And why I loved Wellington College is I personally think it is a microcosm of what New Zealand should be. I looked at it as a perfect mix of conservative and liberal, arts and sports. There was, through Harvey Rees-Thomas, there was a big effort on, I loved the idea of the buddy system and not bullying. It was multicultural. It taught me everything I thought I needed to go into the world and be a New Zealander. But I also left college and became an 18-year-old man. So I went into the world as an 18-year-old man, And my first appearance on TV was on the BBC. I was on the BBC News in Britain. There had been a bit of a kerfuffle. There had been a terrorist situation, and they arrested the terrorists on the street I was staying in. And they knocked on the door that I was staying in, opened the door, and being an 18-year-old man, I had a bathrobe on at 9 in the morning and a can of beer. I was on my OE. The BBC reporter went, "We've just arrested some terrorists on your street. How do you feel?" And all I said was, "I'm just a Kiwi trying to have a good time." And then, of course, I rang my mum. It was 9 o'clock over here. If you don't know, my mum is a judge. She's an amazing woman. She had some very flash friends around. She promptly went, "My son is on the BBC." Turned it on. Just a Kiwi trying to have a good time, mate. But at Wellington College, it taught me so many lessons. Like, I must say, I could have wandered and gone down a different path. I was someone who could be influenced by people because I'm a very people person. And Wellington College was the ideal place for me. I could thrive both as a student and I could thrive on the artistic side. There was very much the Shakespeare side of art that was being done, and people were putting on plays about Shakespeare. But then there was also senior and junior drama, which was a bit more of a left field environment where we adapted a Russian play that we then put on, and people came along. It was an environment where you weren't herded like a sheep down one particular aisle, and that is something that is so important to children. You need to learn to be curious and learn about all these different aspects, and Wellington College has all of those different aspects, because I didn't go into a career path. I went into backing myself to be a comedian. I was lucky enough to win a Billy T. James Award over here that gave me enough money to go overseas and sort of ply my trade. I was in Edinburgh, where I subsequently lost $20,000 putting a show on at the age of 20. And the first night of my show, it was sold out. I got a standing ovation. The second night of the show, there were 30 people there. And 10 minutes in, 28 of them walked out. There were 2 people left, one of them an older guy, and I said, "What are you doing here, mate? Sorry, I've got to stop. What are you doing here?" And he went, "I think I know your mum." "Yes, you do." And then he left. And there was one other guy left. He was about my age. And I said, "Oh, how come you're here?" And he went, "Mate, I went to school with you at St. Pat's." And I went, "No, get out." So it's been a tough road. It has been a tough road, but it's the foundations that kept me strong. I've met friends who, our particular sort of vintage of that mid-90s has produced so many people I'm proud to know. People like Barnaby Weir from the Black Seeds and various members of Fat Freddy's Drop. There's about 200 of that band, so I'm sure some of them went to the school. Brett McKenzie, there's just these lists of people that have created these amazing communities. And whenever I see someone who's from a different, we had Bryce Casey, who's on The Rock. He was on our show 7 Days on Friday. And people who I wasn't at school with, but then when you start talking about Wellington College and Bryce Farland, you start having a few laughs. We had amazing teachers. I got a lot of my comedy, Wolf Haskell is an amazing man. I had nothing but positive experiences with all my teachers. Humans have quirks, and those quirks make them amazing. And Wolf Haskell, Bryce Farland, Dave Selby, I love them all. I love them all. And it was such an amazing part. Like I ran afoul of a few people. The only run-ins I had at school were mainly with Barry, who owned the canteen at the time that I was there. He never put enough sauce on my hot dog, but that had nothing to do with education. The education I got there, I learnt my public speaking at Wellington College through, I used to read the sports results out in assembly. The first 15 lost a big game, and I said we should have a minute's silence for them. And I got into a bit of trouble over that. But I think, like, what I would always encourage my son to do is get into the perfect amount of trouble, where you're never malicious, you're never mean, you're never hurting people, but you are curious and you are having fun. And I hark back to that being curious, because I think that Wellington College now has evolved into this amazing place under Roger Moses, who I only had for my final term, but seeing how strong it is in arts, culture, sport, and whenever I talk to anyone, I live in Auckland now for my sins, and I think Avondale's slightly out of the Wellington College zoning, but I might fly my son down here daily when he gets a bit older. But the school is always looked upon with high regard. When I say to anyone in New Zealand, when they ask me, where do you go to school, and I say Wellington College, they always go, yeah, bloody good school, mate. And you know that in that Kiwi way, Wellington College has a good reputation. Why does it have a good reputation? It's not because of what the kids are doing right now, although that's a huge part of it. What it is all of these old boys who are here last night, who represent the school, and they go out into the world and they achieve in their fields, but more importantly than that, they achieve as good human beings. Wellington College, for me, instilled good values in me, and that combined with what my parents instilled with me really set me up. And I didn't realize at the time how important college would be to me as that sort of underlying thing that bubbles along and gives you the strength, because that's where you learn how to deal with a guy who pushes you over in the playground. That's how you deal with the fact that I can't do maths, but I'm really good at this. College is where you really flourish and you turn into that flower of a human being. And to be honest, all I wish is that the values of Wellington College can seep even more into New Zealand as a whole, and we remain as this beautiful country that we are, and we remain with all you people out there who just stand strong and you don't bully people. You let everyone, if they're into something different, check out what they're into. Don't just push them away. Love your sports, love your arts, and love your fellow humans. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. Please have a few beers. Celebrate. If you're not having a few beers, have a couple of waters. Why not? But to be honest, I must say, Harvey Rees-Thomas, it was amazing having you as headmaster, and your speaking skills and the way you could address, nothing freaks me out more than speaking to school children. I had to do a stand-up gig at Government House in front of the Prime Minister. That was fine. I had to go and talk to some kids in a high school in Whangarei. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. You keep these kids under control, and you gave us a will to go forward and a path to go forward, and the path that you gave us was amazing. And we followed it. People strayed and came back, but my time at Wellington College was so much down to yourself, Gary Gervin, Mike, all the teachers who were there at the time, and it means a lot to me. So thank you kindly, and thank you for having me along tonight. Hei ko nei rā.
Well done, Di. A ringing endorsement, of course, for the Wellington College system and the education that it gave. And of course, it now puts his programs into a totally different light. I'll have to watch television at 5:30 in the evening to find out what, in fact, Di is doing. And I'll try to laugh. I did come with a warning tonight. I forgot what it was now. I think it's the difference between, or what happens when you marry an Australian girl. One guy stood up and he said, I married a Thai woman and she was lovely, and all I said to her was, I want to have the house clean, I want dinner on the table at the same time every night, and I want you as my partner for the rest of your life. And after the first day, he didn't see anything. After the second day, it was starting to look a little bit better. The house was starting to get tidy, and the meal was on the table when he wanted it. The second guy got up, and he said, I married a Filipino. And I said to her, I want someone who I can love, someone who will keep my house tidy, who will do the washing and cleaning and cook my dinner at night for me, every night. First day, didn't see anything. Second day, saw a little change. Third day, everything was the way he wanted it. The third guy got up and said, I married an Australian. And I said to her, I want a woman I can love. I want a woman who'll keep my house tidy, who'll do my ironing, keep it clean, have my dinner cooked 3 courses every night, and we'll be fine. Well, on the first day he didn't see anything. The second day he didn't see anything. The third day, after the swelling started going down, he could see a little out of his right eye. He could make his own sandwich with his left hand, only he was right-handed. He still has trouble peeing, but he's sure the marriage will last. So, if you've learnt something tonight, there's a warning for all you guys who are about to get married. It's time now to switch to the class of 64, to a guy we were bloody scared of at school when I was there. He used to hang out at Firth House. Yeah, so there's a few there. The current kids have got no idea about Firth House. I used to go in there for rugby practice. Well, I think it was a rugby practice. I used to come out battered and bruised, but it was a bloody good time. But the class of 64 had one of the kings, Rick King, and he's here to propose a toast to Firth House. Rick, where are you hiding? Down here.
What an honour and a privilege. 37 years ago, when I came home on a trip, my mother picked me up at Wellington Airport and we headed out to the hut. But we always had a little ritual. We would go through the Victoria Tunnel, and just before we got to the city end of the tunnel, she would slow down. That would allow me to glance nostalgically up to the left to look at that just wonderful institution that had been such a huge part of my life as a schoolboy at Wellington College. And on this particular occasion, I glanced up and I didn't see anything. And I said, did I miss something? Did I blink? So I got Mum to drive around the Basin Reserve and back up the main drive of the school. And we got over there and it was gone. And I was absolutely stunned. I couldn't believe it. I stood there mesmerized by just looking at this foundation, which was all that was left. So I went back to the car and I said to Mum, have they had an earthquake in Wellington? And she said, oh, no, I don't think so. She said, but you don't look very happy and we better go home and have a cup of tea. So we went home and I made some inquiries and I found out that this was an economic decision. Somehow Firth House wasn't paying his way, the numbers were dropping, and it was time for it to go. But I also heard, and no disrespect to you, sir, but I also heard that Mr. Harvey Rees-Thomas, the headmaster at the time, had thought that that Firth House somehow distracted from the school because it divided into us and them. And if that's what Mr. Harvey Reese Thomas believed, he was absolutely right. Tracing up the hill, as we did every night, to a night of misery and deprivation was very, very different from our boys that went home every night to mummy and daddy and the cozy life of their homes, and especially their own bedrooms. We were beaten, bashed, and bullied. We were fed slop in the dining room to the point of semi-starvation. We lined up in the showers and watched the senior boys take all the hot water, shivered in the cold, barely recognizable as members of the mabled species. They could have taken all of us down to the ladies at Wellington Girls, and we could have showered with them. The girls would never have noticed the difference. Up in the dorm, we didn't have a modicum of privacy. You could wait until 2 o'clock in the morning, slip your hand under the sheet for a little bit of teenage exuberance, and the scorn and derision would still pour out of the guy on the bed next to you. King's pulling it would echo around the dorm. And 30 pairs of beady eyes would come boring down on you just to add to your humiliation. So you've got to ask yourself, what did we get? What did we get up at Firth House in return for all this misery? And I think what we got was camaraderie. We were like soldiers in combat. We bonded. We bonded to fight the common enemy. And out of this bonding, we got friendships. We got friendships that were strong, that have lasted to this very, very day. But it wasn't only friendships. We developed a very healthy disdain for authority. As we fought the tyranny of the poor housemasters that tried to control us. And we took this tyranny, unfortunately, this disdain, unfortunately, over to this classroom. And that was certainly something that would not have been to Mr. Reese Thomas's liking. And Brian Waddle was talking about his school report, but he never had one that I got from Mr. Seddon Hill, my very last school report, which said, this boy is not fit to go to university. And I remember taking it home and showing it to Mum, and she said, no, he's just got you muddled up with somebody else. Over at the school, we feared no one. You got into it was a very brave day boy that got into a fight with a boarder. You might be able to summon up a couple of mates to help him out. We could summon an army. Feral Rottweilers straining at the leash to leap into the altercation and uphold the honor of Firth House. So that's probably enough from me. We joked, we laughed, we had a good time. There was no question about that. And as we got older, and we were sort of freed from the restraints of parental observations, we had a lot of fun roving around and having little mini adventures around Wellington. Firth House wasn't for everybody, but for those of us who thrived in its environment, would bring back memories and would bring back a time of our lives that we wouldn't swap for anything. So I would ask you all to charge your glasses, to rise, and to drink a toast to a wonderful institution that is no more, but will live in the memories of all of those who went through it. Firth House. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Well done. Good to see you, mate. Oh, well, that's changed my whole impression on Firth House. They were real people. I know they must have been all right because Ted Clayton used to have them in his book room, and I never got into the book room. It was always locked. I think that was because the Firth House boys there were pretty busy reading books. And it wasn't part of my character. We're just about at an end. We've got dessert to come. But before we complete the evening's functions and go totally social, I'd like to call upon the principal headmaster. Shouldn't call him principal. He's the headmaster of Wellington College, Mr. Roger Moses, to propose a vote of thanks.
Always good hearing Rick King. I had the pleasure of hearing Rick give an address back in 2004, the first 40 years on reunion we had. And I'm very grateful, Rick, that the edition you gave tonight was a modified version. I should just mention that that was a great reunion. It was organised by a man who was with John on the board that appointed me, and I miss him greatly, Mr. John Marshall, who was the head prefect in 1964. I had the sad but very great honour of speaking at his funeral, and Rick also couldn't come back from New York for that. But Keith Quinn gave the address that Rick had written. Keith would love to have been with us tonight, a great old boy, but he's actually over in the south of France having some R&R over there. Look, I'm again going to be quick, but it's appropriate to thank a number of people for this fantastic reunion that's taken place. There's an organising committee, and I'd like to thank in particular Daryl Harvey, who's one of my senior managers, but in particular Mr. Matt Beattie. And I'm really sorry, Matt is currently president of our old boys. Great friend of mine. We were in the same class actually in Auckland in Form 2. And I had the pleasure of playing against him when I was the first encounter I had with Wellington College, when I was in the Auckland Grammar First 15 in 1972. We came down here and thankfully Wellington College won. Anyway, Matt would love to have been here. He had quite a major operation just a couple of weeks ago. He is recovering well from that, but I know he passes on his best wishes, and I'm sure that we, as the community of Wellington College, pass on our best wishes also to Matt. The great day today, and I know many of you came to that, and gee, it was a fabulous day. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't have to organise it. But it was great just to see so much going on there. And the people there who were principally organisers of that were Miss Kirsty Hazeldine, who is our cultural director, Mr. Dave Keat, who is our sports director, and Mrs. Linda Woods, who is in our front office, runs our front office, is an absolutely marvellous person. I would also very much like to thank Linda Schmidt, who has done so much also working in Office 150. She's done a great job. After Patty Ann retired earlier in the year, we thought, who can we get? Who can possibly replace Patty Ann? And it's been an extremely difficult job. But Mike Palin, we thought Mike was almost an archive himself. So it was great to get him back. And he's had some fellow archives working with him, Mr. Gary Gervin and Mr. Peter Walls. And I must also, and I'm going to get a big round of applause here, I know, another gentleman who continues to work one day a week. He is well preserved. He's in great nick, Mr. Ted Clayton, who's with us tonight. There is one other person, though, who I think deserves the thanks of all of us. And without this person, we would not be here this evening. In 1998, she came to work at Wellington College and very soon became involved with the Old Boys Association. It was at a time where there was a need for some great revamping, I guess, of the organisation of the Old Boys, and she set to work to do that. Interesting that the Old Boys Association required a woman's touch, but believe me, it's worked extremely well. She began organising the 40, 50 and 60 years on reunions, which have now been going on for 13 years. And I just want to say to all of you guys who've been back to those, how much I've enjoyed them, how much they've enriched my life. It's been fantastic, and it really has reconnected Old Boys up and down the country. She's also organised reunions that we've had in Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Napier, Nelson and Christchurch. We've had infrequent but really good reunions also in Australia, in Sydney, in Melbourne, Brisbane and in London. She has single-handedly produced that magnificent subscription, well, it's not a subscription because you get it free, that magnificent magazine, The Lampstand, which you get every year. And I know that Sir Ron Briley, who's been a wonderful supporter of the school, he wanted to be here. Unfortunately, he pulled out at the last minute. He had something else. But Ron has spoken, I think, on behalf of so many Old Boys, but he said it's just fantastic. The Lampstand has reconnected Old Boys all around the world. She has also produced, since 2000, the Wellingtonian. And I don't know how many of you have seen the Wellingtonian, but it used to be a reasonably small publication. These days, it's normally about 170 or 180 pages. It is an absolutely magnificent record of Wellington College. She also produces the Collegian 6 times a year. And the Collegian goes to all of our boys, all of their parents, and to other people as well. You can get it online, but that is a wonderful way of catching up with what is happening throughout the college on a more frequent basis. It is her vision and organisation that has been primarily responsible for the 150 years. She's had some great support from Penny, and I'm sure that Penny's going to be recognised soon as well. But she is the person who I would say has got us all here together this evening. I want to ask this wonderful woman on stage, and it is entirely appropriate that we should give an absolutely rousing round of applause to Miss Stephanie Kane.
Wow, faced with all you handsome men tonight, I feel like I'm a lucky contestant on The Bachelor. I'm just waiting for my rose at the end of the night. Thank you, Roger, for your kind words, and to both you and Harvey for your support leading up to this weekend. It's quite ironic that this weekend of Old Boys celebrations has been orchestrated by a gang of girls. My personal thanks to Glenda for processing all your registrations, to my dear darling friend Penny and her team for her expertise in event management and keeping me calm. And Patty Ann, until recently, with the archives, and Linda for organising the open day at the college. I even roped in my mother, my sister and my daughter to help fold the flowers and cut the blazers on your table numbers tonight. I should also acknowledge the blokes who have supported us this weekend: Charlie, Rob, Gil, Cohen, Roy, Bruce, Daryl, Mike, Gary and Ted for their work. Thank you. There's a cast of others at school as well that turned on a great open day for you all. On your behalf, I wish to acknowledge two old boys in particular. Firstly, to Barry Jobson, who some years ago asked me if I'd like to do a little bit of work for the Old Boys Association. What started off with a little bit of admin here and there has morphed into having our own office, a 90-page annual magazine, digital communication, and reunions and gatherings around the country and around the world. I can't wait to go to New York. I'm looking forward to that one. We have become an association to be envied. Secondly, to Matt Beattie, your president, who's not here with us tonight. Matt, together with the executive, have backed me 100% in the concepts devised to bring this weekend together, and I very much appreciate his support. Matt asked me to emphasise to you this evening that Wellington College is a great school because of our great alumni. We would not be enjoying this weekend without the generosity and support of those old boys who 50 years ago in 1967 established the Centennial Trust, which has helped cover the costs of this weekend. 50 years on, he welcomes your ongoing support, whether it be on our executive, organising events, or filling our depleted bank account by making a donation to the association. So we can continue to send you the lampstand, hold reunions, and support both the college and the next generation of old boys as part of our succession plan. Thank you to those who didn't say no when I invited you to MC or make a toast over the weekend. And in particular, my sincere thanks to Rob Webb, who not only MC'd yesterday, but ran a successful advertising campaign across the radio waves to get you all here. Special thanks to Di for flying down from Auckland to speak this evening. We appreciate giving your time amidst your busy schedule. Thank you to John Green for his touching toast to the college, and a special acknowledgement to our wonderful MC, Brian Waddle. You scored a 6 tonight in your MC duties, and we look forward to you calling your 251st test in December. Last but not least, I want to thank you all for being part of our 150th weekend. I've been very fortunate over the past 20 years to have met so many wonderful old boys. I've listened to your memories, I know your secrets, and I count many of you as good friends. Your continued support and your faith in me is what propels me to continue this work for the Old Boys Association. May friendships renewed today endure forever. Thank you.
Great.
Stephanie nearly walked off the stage, but she didn't realise there was just one important duty to perform, and I promise you I'll only speak for about 45 seconds. But just before I do, I'd like to acknowledge two of my former bosses who've spoken tonight. Firstly, Ian McKinnon, who was headmaster of Scots College when I was the bursar there, and Roger Moses, headmaster of Wellington College, when I was bursar at my old school, which was a wonderful thing to do at the time. Now, Stephanie mentioned a rose before. In a moment, I think I'm going to make a presentation of some lovely flowers to her, but I must say it's been an absolute privilege. She mentioned I was the man that hired her about 20 years ago. What a great decision that was at the time. Bit like Roger Moses, when John Green appointed him, they saw his potential. I think I saw the potential in Stephanie to be a great secretary, or as she is called now, executive officer of the Old Boys Association. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me what an incredible job she has done, because in a microcosm, she organised those 10-year gatherings in recent years, but of course, it's given her the experience to organise this incredibly big function that it is for our 150th tonight.
Congratulations, Stephanie, on putting your wonderful organisation abilities together for this event. All we had to do was sign up and cough up and come tonight. But you're the one that's got the whole thing together behind the scenes in your usual courteous, cheerful and very, very efficient manner. Without any further ado, I'm going to make a presentation to Stephanie now.
Stephanie, what a wonderful job she has done, and the energy and enthusiasm she's brought to everything that she's had a hand in has been a joy to behold. Almost to an end before we get to the dessert, but the final official role is that of inviting the youngest old boy present to come to the stage and blow out the candle, and that is Harrison Rees-Thomas, the youngest old boy present. Harrison. I presume you know where the candle is you've got to blow out? Good man. That's the one. Did it work? It's gone. Dessert will be with you shortly, and no more formalities to complete with, but just a chance to say thank you to everybody for tonight. The 150th, I think the 150th comes in, 151st comes early next year, Roger, doesn't it? When we say farewell to Roger Moses. Only fleetingly, he won't be going too far, I'm sure. But thank you for your attendance tonight. I hope you as old boys have enjoyed this function as much as I have enjoyed your association with the college as much as I have. You travel safely and enjoy the college wherever you go. Thank you for this evening.